Hello everybody and welcome to the latest whiskey comparison video. Drew Hanish here, and today I usually like to go back and forth between bourbons and scotches, or something on one side of the Atlantic, something on the other side of the Atlantic. But I got this bottle of Wee Beastie in the mail, and so I really was eager to try it and to give you my opinions on it and talk a little bit about one of my favorite whiskeys, also Corryvreckan, which is from Ardbeg also. And when I was deciding to pair up Wee Beastie, I first thought maybe I would put it up against Ardbeg 10. But as I started thinking about it, I thought, well, if this is kind of a turbulent kind of a whiskey, then maybe I should pair it with another turbulent whiskey, and let's have them face off and see how they do against one another. So let me tell you a little bit about both whiskeys first. Wee Beastie is brand new, just came out in April, and it's a 5-year whiskey. That's right. You usually don't, in fact, I can't think of any scotch I know of that has a 5-year age statement. Probably 8 years. Who is it that did that? Billy Walker's. I'm blanking at the moment. He has a rye finished whiskey. Koval out of Chicago, I think, provides them with the casks. It is. It'll come to me. Glen something or other. Glen Alecky. Glen Alecky. I knew I would get it sooner or later. Anyway, real live on the spot. How about that? But yeah, I mean, you don't normally see a 5-year whiskey, so I think that is a testament to Ardbeg that they are willing to stick themselves out there and say, hey, we can put out a product at this young age, and I bet you guys are going to like it. And so this was my opportunity to taste it, see what I thought about it, and my initial opinions. I actually drank a little bit out of this bottle because I was enjoying it. Price wise between these two, we're talking about $89, I think, is what I paid for that versus $48. So it's significantly less. Corryvreckan is a non-age statement, so we're not sure how old the whiskey is inside of this. Both of them use ex-bourbon casks. This actually, as I understand it, uses Oloroso sherry casks as well, and this one, it sounds like it uses New French oak, but there's a little bit of clarification that could probably come with this whiskey somewhere down the line, because it's not clearly stated where I've seen it. So both are aggressive whiskeys in their own way. This one the youth, and this one more just probably the punch. The ABV is 57.1 on this. This one is 47.4. So this is definitely a less watered down version of Ardbeg. This is Ardbeg coming at you full strength. But it's one of those whiskeys that I've always really enjoyed without even diluting it, without even putting a couple of drops of water in it. To me, it has a lot going on. And the story of my love affair with Corryvreckan started at Ardbeg. I'd had the 10-year. I thought it was good, but putting it up against Laphroaig or Lagavulin, I was still a Laphroaig guy, so it didn't really grab me. But when I went to the distillery and I had a chance to try the entire line set out in front of me, and special circumstance happened, and I was in the room by myself with some nice hearty pours and the ability to sit there for as long as I wanted to and taste through them, I kept going back and forth between the different whiskeys, which is a great way. 5 whiskeys, you're really getting a good cross-section and getting a feel for what each whiskey is like. And I just kept coming back to that Corryvreckan because it was so complex. It had so much going on with it that every time I tasted it against something else, something new would come out at me in the profile. So, as I say, excited about tasting these two side by side. If you don't know the story, Corryvreckan is about a whirlpool that I really want to go see one of these days. You can take a boat out from Oban, I think is the best port to go out of to get there and go see this. It's one of the world's largest whirlpools. It's just north of the Isle of Jura and Isla, so it's right in that general vicinity. But that's where the name came from, because as you read the label, they talk about how turbulent the whiskey is. Beastie, if they had badgers and wolverines in Scotland, I don't think they do. If they had badgers and wolverines, that would be a Beastie. You know, small little creature, aggressive, kind of coming at you. So, all right. There's a smell on this that I can't get. The smoke is definitely there, but there's like this sweet. I get a little green apple in there. I pull that out a lot. There's a baking spice in there too, like a cinnamon or something. In fact, maybe that's what it kind of reminds me of, is a baked apple. A smoked baked apple. Oh yeah, that's it. That's exactly what it is. It's kind of like a apple cobbler kind of thing going on. Add on the peat smoke on top of it. This one, being younger, the cask has not had a lot of time to knock the smoke out of it. So you definitely get a lot. There's a little bit of that Isla earthiness coming through in the background, but it's not really massively in your face. This has a really nice mouthfeel to it. There's something about halfway through as it's getting to the finish, where the alcohol starts to come forward, and there's a bitterness, a little oak char that comes through. I think what's interesting about this whiskey is that the finish reminds me of a bourbon. It has a nice mouthfeel to it. I taste some of that toffee. I get a little bit of vanilla in there, and I get oak. And you see how light that is. They don't chill filter, they don't color this whiskey. It's not spending a lot of time in the oak, so it surprises me that it gets that. Now, as I enjoy this really long finish, there's the green apple comes back again, and I kind of get that baked apple pie kind of thing going on. It's really, really nice. The other thing is that it hits you with a little hint of dark chocolate. When you're not paying attention after the finish is kind of working its way through, this dark chocolate comes out. And it's really interesting. So one of the reasons I re-recorded this video was because I felt like I was giving Beastie a little bit too much credit, being a young whiskey. But honestly, it is a good whiskey, $48. And if you are opposed to smoke, you're probably not going to like it right off the bat. Even if you're a bourbon drinker, you're probably not going to like it. You got to get over your distaste for smoke. You have to remember that these salt flavors and these smoke flavors and this earthy peat is an experience in and of itself. It's not like drinking something sweet. You're now drinking something that is much more savory. And it's part of the reason why I think it's hard for bourbon drinkers to shift over and become fans of Scotch, because if they ever taste something that's smoky like this first, it's so different from what you normally are used to drinking, and they'll say, "Oh, that's too harsh, that's too harsh," and I laugh, because I honestly, a good smoky whiskey to me is nowhere close to as harsh as the corn burn that you get out of bourbon. There's a sweetness there, yes, but that Kentucky hug gets you as you're drinking it. You don't get a Kentucky hug with this. You get a nice, even, front to back whiskey experience. And so, sooner or later, you know, maybe you'll want to dip out there and give it a try. But like I said, don't ever compare it to a bourbon, because Scotch is not like a bourbon. It is its own animal. And not all Scotches are smoky. That's the other thing, is that I hear that. People, I can't drink it because it's that peat and that smokiness. No, the smokiness comes from the West Coast mostly. There are some East Coasts Scotches that are experimenting with peat now, but That was a fuel source for the West Coast, and that's the reason why a lot of those Scotch distilleries on the West Coast and on Islay tend to have that peat influence. So let's jump into Corryvreckan. Definitely jumping up the scale here in terms of ABV, and you can dilute this if you want. I tend to, and people will say, ooh, it's like a cinnamon stick. The smoke is there, iodine. Everything's more muted with this though. That one's telling you what it is right out front. This one says, come investigate. There's a little Vicks vapor rub in there in a positive way. There's a lot that comes out of this. I tend to, when I smell this, there's a little pungency to it, but it also is very fragrant. And what it reminds me of is pine needles. And so if you closed your eyes and smell this whiskey, I feel like you could picture this campfire off in the distance, smoke billowing in the air, and you are walking through this forest of wet pine needles, and you're headed towards this campfire. That's the vision I get in my head when I close my eyes and smell this. It's got some dark fruit and some baking spice to it, a little bit of raisin in there that I can smell. Cloves, little bit of oak in there, but not a whole lot. So I'm gonna taste it. There's more pepperiness in this. This is softer, I think, flavor-wise. This one, I think, because of the high ABV, you're not tasting alcohol, but what you're tasting is a lot of the smoke all over your mouth. But all of these other little flavors come out, and it just depends on when you sit with this and you taste it, that certain things will start pulling through. Sometimes I get espresso out of this. Sometimes it's yeasty. Most of the time I think it's a little yeasty. There's definitely a pepper there, a pepper heat, cinnamon spice. And I say cinnamon spice instead of like a red hot or something like that. There's a little lemon in there. But my favorite on this is the finish, which there's a sweetness on the finish. But have you ever bit into a roasted coffee bean? I get that. I can taste that roasted coffee bean. And yet it's still surrounded by that smoke. And this is not a sweet whiskey, really. You may pick up a little bit of cherry or something like that in there. There's a little bit of dark chocolate, so it's more on the bitter side probably, but not as bitter as this one gets in towards that finish. But you guys voted 30 to 70 on this, and I know a lot of you haven't tasted this because it's really new. I get it. I would buy either one. Both of these will stay in my collection. It's nice to know that Ardbeg, these are both core line products now, so when you want to get them, they should be available. This one's going to save you a few bucks. I would not call this an entranceway into Islay whiskey. I think it's going to be a little too aggressive probably for somebody who wants to dabble in and see if they like Islay whiskeys. But I would take either one of them. It's really a toss-up for me. In terms of if I was making a purchase decision. I will say though, my cabinet will never be without Corryvreckan. Will never be without Corryvreckan because I really, really like that whiskey because it is so multi-dimensional that every time you taste it, you get something new out of it. So next time I will come back and I will do a video about a bourbon, and I might even tout my new Kentucky travel bourbon book. But anyway, until next time, you guys, enjoyed it, and go check them out. They're really good.